Hello and happy holidays! You may know about Santa's ninth reindeer, Rudolph, and his red nose, but how much of his story have you really heard? Today, I have two stories to read you about the most famous reindeer in the world. First, I'll read Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which tells the classic story of how Rudolph joins Santa's team. And then I'll read Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Rides Again, in which Rudolph saves a family of bunnies from the wolves while trying not to be late to help the rest of the reindeer pull Santa's sleigh. Let's get comfy and warm as we read Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by Barbara Shook Hazen. Pictures by Richard Scarry. Once, there was a reindeer named Rudolph who lived at the North Pole in Toyland. Rudolph was younger and smaller than the other reindeer there. They all had proud, tall antlers. Rudolph's antlers were only tiny stubs. Worst of all, Rudolph had a nose that was big and bright red. It was so red it glowed in the dark. Poor Rudolph. He wanted to be like the other reindeer in Toyland. Oh, to have a small brown nose instead of a big bright red one. The other reindeer made fun of Rudolph and called him names. "Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer," they teased over and over until tears glistened on Rudolph's large red nose. Sometimes the other reindeer made a circle around Rudolph and sang, red nose, a funny sight, big as an apple and twice as bright." They kicked up snowballs with their tiny hooves and covered Rudolph with a blanket of white fluffy snow. All the reindeer loved to play games. They played tree tag and snowslide and tumble bones. But Rudolph was never asked to play. He stood behind a pine tree and watched. He was very lonely. Rudolph couldn't even play hide and seek with the rabbits. His glowing red nose gave him away every time. Before Christmas Eve, Santa's elves posted a sign on the gate to Toyland. "Santa's team choosing time," the sign said. All the reindeer were asked to line up at 8 o'clock in the meadow. Santa Claus was coming to choose the team that would deliver presents to every good little boy and girl in the world. The reindeer fairly danced with excitement when they heard the news. They pranced and tossed their antlers and pawed the snowy ground with their hooves. Each reindeer hoped he would be chosen to guide Santa's sleigh. It was the greatest honor a reindeer could ever have. Rudolph sighed. He was ashamed to have Santa see his bright red nose, so he decided to hide. At 8 o'clock, when all the other reindeer had gone to the meadow, Rudolph hid behind a holly hedge. His bright red nose blended in with the bright red berries, and the thick growth of leaves concealed the rest of him. No one would find him there. In the meadow, all the reindeer in Toyland, except Rudolph, stood in a line while Santa inspected them. Santa chose carefully. Only the fastest, the strongest, and the best reindeer would do. "I think Dasher will be fine. He's the biggest reindeer," said Santa. "Dasher," wrote his elf assistant in a big book. "And Dancer is the strongest," said Santa, pulling his beard. "Dancer," wrote the elf. "Ho, ho, let's see," continued Santa. "Here's Prancer and here's Vixen. They make the smoothest landings on rooftops. Comet is the fastest and Cupid is the most sure-footed," said Santa. "I pick them." "And last," said Santa, "I choose Donder and Blitzen. They're the best at twisting over treetops and skimming over telephone poles." The reindeer in Santa's team were very happy. They rubbed noses, they danced and clinked their antlers together. Even the reindeer who weren't chosen were given good jobs. One was to try out electric trains. Another was to cuddle Christmas kittens. The only reindeer without a job was Rudolph. He wanted to help, but he knew he would be laughed at. So he stayed hidden behind the holly hedge. At last, it was Christmas Eve. Santa's elves were busy packing the sleigh. "I don't care if they do make fun of me," said Rudolph suddenly. "I want to help too." He dashed from his hiding place behind the hedge and went to find Santa. "There must be something I can do to help," he decided. The night was bitter cold, and a terrible fog covered all the earth. Santa's elves kept bumping into each other as they hitched up the team. They could hardly see as they put on each bright red harness and tied each jingle bell. To make matters worse, Dasher and Dancer were fighting over who was to be the lead reindeer. "I was chosen first," said Dasher, stamping angrily. "But you always trip over the moon," said Dancer, kicking a fallen star. Even Santa was cross. "We'll never get there if you two don't stop quarreling," he said. "And where is my Christmas list? Dash it all, I can't see a thing in this fog." Just then, a soft red glow lit up the snow. "Oh, thank goodness," said Santa, suddenly jolly again. "I've found my list. Oh, I must have tucked it in my belt." "Who brought this fine lantern?" asked Santa. "I must take it with me. Why, I can see perfectly now." "It's not a lantern," said Rudolph, trembling. "The light comes from my nose." "Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer," said Santa. "I'm certainly glad to see you. Your light will guide my sleigh tonight. I appoint you head of my team and #1 reindeer in all the world." Rudolph held his head high. Proudly, he pranced to the front of the team. All the other reindeer bowed. Donder and Dancer helped Rudolph put on his harness, and Cupid gave him a beautiful sprig of holly berries. Then, down through the clouds and over the sleeping houses, Santa and his team flew on that foggy Christmas Eve. And leading the whole procession was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So, if you see a soft glow in the sky on Christmas Eve, you can be sure that Rudolph, the most famous reindeer of all, is very near. The end. And now, our second book, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Shines Again. Adapted from the story by Robert L. May. Illustrated by Darrell Baker. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was unhappy. Last Christmas, he had been a hero. His shiny red nose had lit the way for Santa's sleigh. But since then, the other reindeer had been jealous and unfriendly. "Well now, Red Nose," said Dasher, "let's see you carry this sack to the sled." Rudolph tugged and pulled, but the sack was too heavy for him. Finally, it burst open. The other reindeer laughed. By the time Rudolph had put all the presents back in the sack, the others were playing on the snow-covered slopes. At supper time, Rudolph sat off in a corner alone, eating his mince pie and feeling very sorry for himself. Later, Santa and the other reindeer began to get ready for the big Christmas Eve journey. Rudolph watched from the window. "No one likes me," he thought, wiping away a tear. Then, he noticed his reflection. "My nose doesn't even shine anymore," he said. "Santa certainly won't need me now. I might as well leave." Rudolph wandered away toward the forest. In the dark, 6 glowing eyes shone from behind the trees. 3 wolves were watching Rudolph, but Rudolph didn't see them. He was too busy feeling sorry for himself. Suddenly, Rudolph stopped. He heard someone crying. There, at the edge of the forest, he saw a family of very sad rabbits. "Why are you crying?" he asked. "Our two youngest babies are lost," said Father Rabbit. "The wolves are sure to get them," wailed Mother Rabbit. The rabbits looked so small and helpless that Rudolph felt big and brave and strong. "Don't cry," he said. "I'll find your babies." Rudolph charged into the forest. Crash! He banged into a tree trunk. He had forgotten that his nose didn't light up anymore. But that didn't matter. He would find the baby rabbits somehow. Rudolph stood still and tried to remember all his reindeer lessons. He twitched his big ears so he could hear better. He wrinkled his nose so he could sniff better. Then he moved quietly through the woods, listening and sniffing. Suddenly, he heard a strange noise, and he sniffed a strange smell. There, hiding beneath a bush, were the two baby rabbits, shivering with cold and fright. "Don't be afraid," said Rudolph softly. "I've come to take you home. Jump onto my back and away we'll go." As he sped through the forest, Rudolph saw the three wolves. He zigzagged through the trees, twisting this way and that. He ran so fast the wolves could not keep up with him. Finally, Rudolph got back to the edge of the forest. How happy Mother and Father Rabbit were to see their babies, and how proud Rudolph felt. "Please stay with us," said Father Rabbit. "We're going to have a wonderful Christmas party." When he heard the word Christmas, Rudolph remembered Santa. "Thank you," he said to the rabbits, "but I have to go home. Santa may need me tonight. I know now that I can help, even without a shiny nose. Goodbye, and Merry Christmas to all." Rudolph started running. Faster and faster he went, until he was flying through the dark sky. When he looked down, he discovered that he could see the ground. "Why, my nose is glowing again," he cried. "I wonder if the light came back because I stopped feeling sorry for myself." Far below, Rudolph saw Santa and the reindeer. "Oh dear," Santa was saying. "It's getting so foggy I can't see a thing. Where, oh where is Rudolph with his shiny red nose?" The other reindeer hung their heads in shame. They knew why Rudolph wasn't there. Just then, a rosy glow lit up the snow. With a zoom and a whoosh, Rudolph landed. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Some rabbits needed help. They had lost their babies."
"Did you find them?"
asked Santa. "Yes, I did," said Rudolph, and his nose glowed even redder with pride. "Hooray for Rudolph!" shouted the reindeer.
"Now let's be on our way," said Santa.
"We're sorry we were so mean and jealous," said Dasher as Santa hitched him up behind Rudolph. "That's all right," said Rudolph. "The important thing is that I stopped feeling sorry for myself." Then they were off.
"Thank goodness for Rudolph and his bright, friendly light," said Santa. "Without him, there would be no Merry Christmas for children tonight."
And off in their cozy den, the rabbits whispered, "Thank goodness for Rudolph and his brave, kind heart. Without him, there would be no Merry Christmas for rabbits tonight." The end.